and welcome to this special edition of Citizens Review. I'm Aaron Ferguson, and before we begin this show tonight, we want to invite each and every one of you to join us on our website at citizensreviewtv.com. To ask your questions, send us your emails, and give us your comments on the show. The first week we had over 10,000 viewers on our website. This week we had almost double that number. We realize that we have a large following for this show, so email us your concerns, your suggestions, or your show ideas. We want to make sure that this is the one place where we get to ask our questions and get the answers we deserve. So send us your questions at citizensreviewtv.com. Follow us on Twitter at Citizens Review, or join our Citizens Review Facebook group so we can update you regularly on what goes on with the show. For example, this week, the Tribune's Insight editorial focused in on our citizens' arrest of Ryan Pinder nonetheless, where we analyzed the idea of his never having voted in the Bahamas. We brought it up here first, and we want to thank the Tribune, at least this week, for some good journalism. Once again, that's citizensreviewtv.com. Now, tonight, we have on the show the two most popular men in the Bahamas, at least in this time, in Dr. Dwayne Sands and Mr. Ryan Pinder. We've requested that they come on together. However, Dr. Sands was favorable, Mr. Pinder was not. Little did they know that a one-on-one interview on this show can prove to be more challenging than sitting on a panel, as you will soon see. Tonight's show is going to be exciting, it's going to be informative, as both candidates will answer to the facts as presented. We've heard speculations about citizenships, eligibility, disqualifications, new ministers to come, bad registers, protested ballots, and a loss of a surgeon. But what we have not heard is from the men themselves. That's what we'll get here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We are the citizens. And next up, we'll run the review. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back, and we're here with one of the two contenders for the Elizabeth seat, in a case that we hope will come up sooner rather than later. Mr. Pinder, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
First things first, we want to get straight to the issues. The first question is, Mr. Pinder, have you in fact voted in an election in the Bahamas before?
No.
You have not?
No, I have not resided in the Bahamas during the time there was a general election. It would have been illegal for me to have voted in the Bahamas.
Okay. The question then remains, there's a rule that says that you have to be in the Bahamas 6 months, which you just quoted, before you vote in a constituency. Mm-hmm. And the cultural implications of you having never voted are that people would suggest that the same rule that says you have to be in the country 6 months before you voted would somehow lend itself culturally to you have to have voted before, participate in the process before in order to run. What do you say to people who suggest that?
Well, I don't think there's any law in the books that would require that to be the case. Certainly, I don't think that that is a test of somebody's ability to serve the people. I don't think that is a test for somebody's ability to understand the needs and the concerns of the people and adequately fight for that in both the House of Assembly as well as within the constituency. So I think it's a red herring and has no relevance at all.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let's say I'm a politician, I'm running for election, and I say, Ryan Pinder, my name is Aaron Ferguson, I'm running for president of the Bahamas, and I want you to vote for me. The challenge is that if I have in fact never voted, I couldn't even return the favor. This is why people have a question.
Well, Sir Lyndon Pinling didn't vote before he ran the first time.
Okay.
A.D. Hanna, I don't think, didn't vote before he ran the first time either. Mm-hmm. And certainly I think that those are two examples of monumental Bahamian leaders within our history.
But those were persons who were off to college, who had been in the Bahamas for all of their lives and probably hadn't voted just because they were in college. Your situation is a bit different. You lived, resided, and voted, or registered to vote, at least that we can prove, in the United States.
But
So
that
it's
has no bearing on my ability to serve within the Bahamas.
But it
certainly
raises
has
questions for people about whether or not
well, a lot of
you're
things
really interested in the process.
A lot of things raises questions for people. I think
Okay.
that you need to look at people's actions and judge for yourself. Certainly, if I was disinterested in the process, I wouldn't have gone through 6 to 8 weeks of this grueling election. If I was disinterested in the process, I wouldn't have become committed to a political party very early on my return, to the point where I have worked on the ground, building branches within the party, running for party office, obtaining the most
But
votes of vice chairman within the party.
One could argue that if you stand to become the member of parliament, that's why you did it, as opposed to being completely interested in the people of it.
Well, I would ask those people that have those questions to come and meet with me and pass judgment based upon that. Many of the people that you hear speaking of this have never even met me. So to take a position on my character, to take a position on my dedication, to take a position on my caring for the issues and concerns of the Bahamian people without even having spoken with me is a little disingenuous.
Let me ask a question then. When we evaluate politicians, we have little to go on. The politicians always outline their plans, as you have on ryanpinder.com, and we speculate about that because we don't know if that is necessarily going to be what happens. We've had our plans, we've had agendas, we've had trusts, and all of this fun stuff, and we've seen that not work. The question is, outside of your plan, how are we to get to know you? So we go and we look at your record, and your record suggests that you haven't voted. That is a tier of how we decide whether or not to support the candidate.
No,
Is it not a valid question?
That is a tier that maybe you might decide.
Okay.
Certainly, I don't think it's a valid question. I don't
Okay.
think it's a valid issue. I don't think it has any applicability or bearing on my ability to be a good MP and my ability to serve the Bahamian people.
Okay.
Certainly, if anybody wanted to take the initiative to come and get to know me, you know as much as I know, Aaron, because we speak frequently over a number of different mediums,
Agreed.
that I am an extremely accessible person
Agreed.
for people to come and meet with me, ask genuine questions of me. And I have always been honest.
Okay.
I have always been honest. I am a frequent participant in a number of different forums in the media.
Okay.
For the ability for people to interact and understand where I'm coming from.
Let's deal with the other side of this issue. The Prime Minister had a press conference this weekend, and he alluded to some other facts. He asked if you have proof that you have, in fact, renounced citizenship in the United States by being able to produce a canceled American passport. Do you have the proof?
Well, when you renounce your U.S. citizenship, the United States government seizes your passport.
Okay.
So if you're asking me if I have a canceled U.S. passport, I don't, because the U.S. government has my passport.
Okay.
Yes, I have renounced my citizenship. Yes, I have proof that I've renounced my citizenship, and I have proof that demonstrates that I renounced it before nomination day.
Okay.
Now, if anybody wants to challenge that, and I am on record prior of saying that. So the fact that somebody does not believe what I say is their issue.
Well,
and if they would like to challenge that, they are under the responsibility to provide the evidence to that effect.
Well,
I am on record of saying that.
We've done some research that suggests that the renunciation process is not that simple. For example,
It's final.
there's-
It's final.
I
It is
understand
final.
that, but there's a
Okay.
case with a person by the name of Kenneth Nichols O'Keefe. In our research, it shows that he's a former U.S. Marines that renounced citizenship. He applied to do such. And the United States government, on the basis that it is likely that he would return to the United States, denied his application. Now, the question becomes, you technically are employed with a U.S. law firm. Is
I'm
that
employed
correct?
by a U.S. law firm.
You're
yes.
employed by a U.S. law firm, and the charges are out there that your wife is an American, your children are Americans, your mother is an American. It's not to be funny, but to make the point. It is likely that there are points where you will need to return to the United States, whether for business meetings, whether for family functions, whatever it may be. So, based on the information we had, we asked, because the process of renunciation is not just as simple as saying, I renounce.
Aaron, it is final, approved,
Okay.
approved by the embassy, approved by Washington.
Okay.
It is final.
And you have proof.
I have proof.
That issue is settled. The next question for us. In the debate, the great debate, you talked about the small and medium businesses. You asked whether or not a boom, you suggested that there could be a boom. You said that we can achieve a boom of small and medium businesses. The people of Elizabeth can enhance their employment. Expand on that, because there wasn't enough time for you to give details to tell us how that works.
Well, you know, the backbone of any successful economy, certainly within this region, but I would argue globally, is built on the basis and on the backs of small businesses.
Okay.
What small businesses allow you to do is it allows economic empowerment and economic ownership by Bahamians. Not only does it allow economic empowerment and ownership, and by its nature diversification, but it also allows for the creation of jobs from the private sector.
Okay.
Something we've heard a lot discussed in the Bahamas. We need to be less reliant on jobs given out by the government, more reliant on the private sector. I even think Mr. Jones spoke about that today on our show. So certainly as we promote the growth and success of small businesses, not only does it empower Bahamians, allow for a whole new class of Bahamians with respect to economic ownership, it also magnifies and increases the job creation within the Bahamas, and specifically within Elizabeth.
The question is, how does that happen? How does Elizabeth, a constituency all the way in the east, suddenly experience a boom in small and medium businesses? How is it facilitated? Where does the capital come from?
Well, there's a couple of issues.
Okay.
You know, I've counseled and advised small businesses for over a decade now.
Okay.
And certainly I've understood and experienced this also growing up in a business household, that many small businesses might fail because the owners are ill-prepared to go into business. They might have a good idea, they might have the ambition, they might have the excitement, but they're ill-prepared. They don't understand what I call the foundation, the accounts, the marketing plan, the business plan, the structure on how you're going to grow your business. What I propose to do is put a small business re-education campaign within Elizabeth, where prospective entrepreneurs will be able to come and learn what I call the foundational elements to enhance their ability to succeed.
But where will the boom come from? With educating business persons, that suggests that more people will go into business. But where do we experience the boom? How will it be facilitated in terms of funds?
Well, you have to, one, address the education campaign.
Okay.
The second element you would have to address are incentive provisions to allow for small businesses to succeed. You know, what I advocate for is a small business incentive legislation. That's a national piece of legislation that under a certain threshold, and whatever that threshold is, whether it be $3 million in annual volume or whatever it might be, you get certain duty exemptions and you get certain access to interest-free loans to both help you get somewhat of an advantage on your product without having to come out with the upfront costs that we penalize businesses with today, saying you have to come up with the upfront costs of duties and then recoup it on the back end. Well, that penalizes businesses. Okay. We give them an incentive on bringing their product in, but we also give an incentive on interest-free loan programs to help provide capital and access to capital to help grow the business. Now we can't expect new businesses to be, $10, $20 million in revenues a year. You have to grow business enterprises.
Okay.
My family's business enterprise didn't just become a large business enterprise. It used to be a small business enterprise, and over the years, but you have to have a support mechanism in place to allow that growth.
All right.
And that's what I think is ever important. That's where I think that we have let down entrepreneurs in the Bahamas. You being an entrepreneur, I think you can appreciate that. And certainly we have to put in frameworks and mechanisms for both education as well as incentives to succeed.
Okay. All right. We've heard from Mr. Pinder some of the information you've heard here on this show for the first time. We'll be right back after these messages with more from Ryan Pinder. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here with Mr. Ryan Pinder. Mr. Pinder, we have a question about issues raised by the Prime Minister in his press conference. The Prime Minister said that if, in fact, you were a U.S. citizen, and you've already said that you have the proof that you renounced before the nomination day, but the Prime Minister has suggested that he intends to bring forth the constitutional argument that you are, in fact, not eligible to be a member of Parliament. Now, upon research, we found that Article 48 of the Constitution, Section 1B, says, and I quote, "No person who is by virtue of his own act under any acknowledgement of allegiance, obedience, or adherence to a foreign power can be qualified to be elected to the House of Assembly." It seems like the government is planning in the election court case to argue that you, aside from the fact that you did not win, you are not eligible to be a member of Parliament. You're a lawyer. Let's talk about it.
Well, one, it's another red herring. But secondly, in this election proceeding that we filed petition on yesterday, is for the sole purpose, and it's within the Parliamentary Elections Act, so I invite everybody to review it, for the sole and limited purpose of reviewing the protest ballots and determining whether those persons were entitled to vote. That's it. That's the only thing
is
that
the FNM able to file a counterclaim with their issues?
Only after the election has been certified and the Member of Parliament has been sworn in. Can the FNM bring their subsequent, if they choose to do so, election court petition, which is, as we traditionally understand, a full election court matter like we had in recent cases. But this matter is not a full election court matter. It is for a sole and limited purpose. Because remember, the election's not certified, so it's a proceeding within the election. The election is still ongoing. It has not been certified, it's not final. And so that is why this is a special provision and special procedures within the Act to only deal with the protest ballots.
Now, your party is suggesting that you will, in fact, win the election court case. I think that is a bit presumptuous, but the party leader, Mr. Perry Christie, has gone on record as saying that we will be successful.
I'm confident we will.
I understand the confidence, but justify. Why does the PLP think so confidently that they will win the election court challenge?
Well, because we believe we have an understanding of the protest ballots. And we believe,
an understanding in that you know
those
how they
persons
voted.
Well, within the room, you know who voted on the protest ballots because you see the protest ballots. So that's not, this issue that the Prime Minister raised about it being a breach of confidence or whatever is actually the returning officer made a public statement to the media that the protest ballots were for the PLP. So we were able to review those in the recount room.
Now, the Prime Minister argues that 4 of the persons on the protest ballots are not eligible to vote
in the
Elizabeth constituency.
We completely disagree.
How do you disagree? What is the nature of your disagreement?
Well, because we believe that they were entitled to vote in the Elizabeth elections. In fact, we believe that many of them should have voted on white ballots. So we believe that to be the case. We also believe that we were denied our rights to be, or my rights to be certified after the recount because there were 3 legally valid ballots cast for me that were rejected by the returning officer.
It is my understanding that, for example, one of them has your name written in on the ballot.
2 of them.
2 of them. Is that a duly casted ballot,
Absolutely.
Or is it destroyed
no,
because someone wrote on the ballot as opposed to following the instruction?
Bahamian case law. Cyril Fountain versus Smith, I ask anybody to go look at it. Bahamian case law and English case law that both say that is a valid ballot under Bahamian legal precedent.
You and I both know that there have been elections in the past where people's ballots have been struck because they have written on the ballot.
Written their name.
Their name. As opposed to
my name. Because if you, the argument is if you write your name, you obviously can identify who that is. And that is, that's grounds for it to be struck. Identifying, writing the candidate's name is not a basis for it to be struck. In fact, there's legal precedent to say otherwise that it's a valid ballot. and there was another ballot where the X, a discernible X, was made in ink as opposed to the pencil.
And in ink, you mean the thumb ink?
It appears that they might have used their thumb to do the X.
Okay.
And we have case law to say that that's a valid ballot.
Okay,
as well.
but couldn't it have been that the person just picked up the ballot and pressed their thumb on
It's
it?
a distinct X.
Okay.
And only an X, no smudge.
Okay,
It's a
so that's
distinct
going to be,
X.
all of it is going to be
But
basically
those,
arguable.
but those ballots are also a subject of election court, full election court petition, rather than this proceeding, which is solely for the purpose of the protest ballots.
Okay. Let's move on to another issue. During the debate, Mr. Rodney Monka asserted that Mr. Perry Christie does not support your candidacy. The PLP suggested that is ludicrous. However, we did some research, and we found on a popular website, Bahamas Issues. You have a profile on Bahamas Issues called CANSFINS, C-A-N-E-S-F-I-N-S. That is your profile?
Yeah.
Okay. And you alone have access to writing on the website?
As far as I know,
As
but
far as you
these
know.
days you can't guarantee.
Okay, all right. There was a statement made about the PLP, the fresh wind blowing in 2002. And in response to it, one of your comments was that there was nothing new about the PLP in 2002. Our question is, there is in fact nothing new about the PLP in 2007. All of the members of Parliament of the PLP are the same persons, with one exception of Picewell Forbes. And the chairman of the PLP has now returned from 2002, which is Bradley Roberts. Do you in fact support the way the PLP is functioning, the way it is going as a new candidate? And there's a lot of sentiment in the country about Mr. Perry Christie and the leadership. How do you feel about that?
Well, I want to address your initial point first. I think, and I haven't even seen the thread, and it's probably a very old thread, but the context of that was with respect to the philosophies of the PLP, I think.
Okay.
And certainly the philosophies of the PLP are the philosophies of the PLP.
Well, the philosophies were marketed a bit differently in 2002. It was suggested that there was a new PLP.
Well, I think the philosophies of the philosophies, how they are applied in the modern era, are what are important.
Okay.
For instance, part of the Constitution of the PLP says that the PLP is an advocate for equal rights and equal opportunities for all Bahamians, and they say equal political, equal social, equal economic opportunities. I advocate that is a sound foundational element of the party.
Okay.
Whereas in history it might have been more for political opportunity, today it might be more for economic opportunity, but the foundational elements are still the same.
Okay.
You asked a question about the state of the PLP.
And are you pleased with it?
And am I pleased with it? Well, certainly I am. I'm a National Party officer, not only a candidate. I'm a vice chairman of the party. I'm actually the oldest vice chairman at the age of 35.
Okay.
Oldest elected vice chairman at the age of 35. Certainly I think that, or I know that there is certainly a youth movement and a opportunity for dialogue and policy shaping within the party for those who want to be a part of it.
The popular perception about the PLP is that the PLP is run by the old guard, the General Council of the PLP.
See, I disagree with that because, for instance, I have a meeting tonight. I co-chair the Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade Committee of the party. It's a policy-making party.
Who's the other chairperson?
Old Mitchell.
Okay, that's old guard, though.
But I'm the co-chair.
Okay.
I call the meeting. I run the meeting.
Okay.
We helped write a position paper that I was the lead editor on, on policy and the platform of the party for foreign affairs and foreign trade.
Are there any other functioning boards in the parties that you can cite where the old guard isn't in charge?
Well, there's the economic committee that's headed by Michael Halkitis.
Okay.
I wouldn't classify him as old guard
I
per se.
yeah. He's a former candidate.
Yeah,
but
I mean, so certainly there is opportunity, and certainly we are witnessing that in the administration of the PLP. If I wasn't so confident in that, and if the leadership in the party wasn't so confident in that, I certainly wouldn't have been the candidate in this all-important by-election either.
Well, there are people who take issue with the leadership making you the candidate because of some of your challenges with citizenship and other things.
That's fair enough.
They say you're not well vetted as a candidate.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that
Okay.
because, you know, my citizenship is a non-issue.
Okay.
You know, certainly I ran a very clean campaign. I'm a 21st century politician. You didn't hear me go, unlike many of my opponents, go on personal attacks and roll in the mud. I'm a man about the issues and the issues that are important to the people in Elizabeth.
But in the debate, and we questioned this on this show before, you advocated that the PLP provided national health care for the people of the Bahamas, and that is not so. The PLP was not able to execute that plan and get it to a point where one person got health care from it.
No, I said the PLP promoted the basis for national health insurance in the Bahamas and providing that to Bahamians. The fact that
but
the
the
current
promotion
government
of it and actually executing is
Well,
the challenge.
well,
that is always the question. The PLP was not able to get it done.
Well, the PLP was not able to get it done only in that the current government did not see what was agreed to through.
Okay.
You have to understand when you're talking about fundamental, and this is a fundamental policy shift in the Bahamas.
Okay.
It truly is. When you're talking about fundamental policy shifts within a country and within a government, it is not done at a snap of the finger.
Okay. It's certainly done within 5 years. It could be completed. One can argue.
Well, one can argue that, but
The
certainly we
FNM
started with
executed
the blue ribbon. Well, that's not
prescription
a
drug plan
fundamental
was done
shift.
quickly.
But that's not a fundamental shift
I
in
mean,
policy.
but
that's
we
a piece
have,
of legislation.
However fundamental and however long it takes, it should be able to get done in one term.
And it was put in place and then pulled back by the current government.
But the same politicians who promise us that they will get these things done always promise us fundamental shift in a 5-year term, which is all they can guarantee. And if you're saying that it can't be done in 5 years, then we have a challenge.
Well, certainly I'm not saying it can't be done in 5 years, and certainly I would argue that I represent the type of politician that would be aggressive. For instance, I firmly believe that the Bahamas has to take another fundamental policy shift in taxation. And certainly that is an all-important topic that we will need, whoever is the next government of the day, will need to address. And I advocate that you will need to address it early on, and put in a fundamental shift. So there are fundamental shifts that we go through as a country. Some take more analysis than others, and certainly I think something like a fundamental tax reform requires a lot of analysis, but it requires to move fairly quickly going forward.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Mr. Pinder says that we need to implement a tax system in the Bahamas, and I'm hoping that the PLP with Mr. Pinder involved could get it done in 5 years. We'll be right back after these breaks. Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on the show, and we have the next guy in the race, Dr. Dwayne Sands, a famous politician as for now, and also the man that hopes to be the next representative of the people in Elizabeth. Dr. Sands, thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We want to get straight into the issues. In a presentation to the Rotary Club of East Nassau, you referred to looking at national health insurance by evaluating the components of cost. This is part of your argument as to why the plan suggested was not going to work. The question we have is doctor fees. You're a doctor. Your declaration suggested you're paid some $450,000 a year. Now, should doctor fees be the barrier to people in the Bahamas getting health care?
No, they shouldn't be, nor are they the barrier. If you look at the contribution of physicians' fees to the total cost of providing care, physician fees form perhaps the least significant part of the cost of delivery of care.
Okay.
If you look at in whatever system, whether it's U.S., European, British, Canadian, or even Bahamian, physician fees account for probably less than 25% of the total cost of delivering care. And while it is a nice story. It simply is not true.
Okay.
That it is because of physician fees. When you look at the cost of drugs, when you look at the cost of technology, CT scans, MRIs, PET scans, chemotherapy, expensive prostheses, in an aging population, in a population that is getting increasingly more ill, the significant component of healthcare costs are not the professional fees.
Okay.
It is all of the other things that go along with it.
Okay.
Now, where physicians are expensive is because physicians are the ones that are writing the prescription
Okay.
for these things.
Okay.
And so each time you have an additional specialist added to your healthcare system, you can anticipate that the overall delivery of care, or the cost of that delivery, is going to go up.
So the amalgamation of fees from physicians when you engage specialists, does that cause the cost to go up higher and make up the majority of costs?
No, specialists tend to utilize more expensive therapies.
Okay.
You know, if before there were cardiac surgeons and cardiologists in the Bahamas, we weren't doing catheterizations in the Bahamas. We weren't doing open heart surgery in the Bahamas. We weren't doing a lot of these expensive tests. There's no question about it. Cardiac care is expensive. The results are wonderful,
Okay.
but it costs a tremendous amount.
Okay.
You know, if people were just, you know, allowed to let nature take its course.
Okay.
When you introduce somebody that has a particular skill, and that particular skill demands certain diagnostic and therapeutic maneuvers now, it is going to cost.
Okay. Now,
Even if those individuals are not receiving, you know, any large amount of money based on their output.
okay. Let me ask a question. Now, I'm not a medical doctor, and neither is the majority of the Bahamian population. So, I have a comparative question. An example would be Dr. Nicolette Bethel. She is a cultural anthropologist, probably spent just as much time in school as you did studying in a different area. But at the College of the Bahamas, she received no salary of $450,000. Why is it and how is it that we justify doctors making that kind of money?
Well, I mean, you can ask, why is it that you justify any professional?
But doctors seem to be the highest paid salaried professionals.
Seen by whose microscope?
Well, I don't know of any other than attorneys who, you know, they make money on some other terms. But doctors in the Bahamas are the highest paid professionals. The CEO of Scotiabank does not make $450,000.
I don't think that you have any basis for making that determination.
Okay.
If you were to do an economic census,
Okay.
as was done, and if you look at the top attorneys, top accountants,
Okay.
top businessmen, owners of hotel properties, owners of shops, etc.
But most of the time, most of their monies come from profits in their private business. I know you do have a private business, but my question is about your government salary.
Oh, my government salary is $80,000 a year.
Well, that makes all the difference. That makes all the difference. Because now, what I'm trying to figure out is how come doctors are able to charge so much? Because a lot of people, and we don't understand why. Explain it to us. A lot of people are concerned about the ability to charge and then what it ends up costing at the end for them to get better.
Again, I think, you know, the question of relative value is what we need to talk about. Let's say I need a car.
Okay.
And if I have to pay $40,000 for a particular brand of a particular car, is that too much or too little? That car is very important for me to be able to drop my kids to school or to go to the grocery store. Or if I go into a grocery store and I want to buy a particular brand of cornflakes, is $6 too much to pay? You know, what is the relative value?
Okay.
How much value do you put on someone's life? If I need to be defended in a court of law, is $50,000 too much?
Yeah, well,
is
your freedom's are at
$100,000
risk.
too much?
Okay.
If I'm doing a conveyance on a piece of property, is a certain percentage of the value of the property too much? So if we talk about, and this is very personal, if I want to send my daughter or my son to school, how much is too much to spend annually on a college education.
Yeah.
Is 60,000 too much? Is 70,000 too much?
I would
Because that's
say
what it costs.
60,000 is a bit much, but go ahead.
Okay, so these relative values now, it depends on priorities.
Okay.
Should we spend $1,000 a month on health insurance?
Mm-hmm.
Should we spend $500 for a pair of shoes?
Okay.
$1,000 for a handbag?
Let me ask you another question. This is a comparative political question. The Republican Party's response to the Democrats' proposition of health care is that they support health care as a strategy, but not that particular health care. Now, I know that, in fact, you've said that that is not your strategy. You, in fact, support national health insurance, but you support another way to do it. What is the way to do it? How do we achieve national health care in the Bahamas? You're a medical professional. What are your suggestions?
Well, I've tried to make it very clear that I believe that this is a discussion that demands bipartisan, generalized discussion. Mm-hmm. It demands the input of all of the sectors in this economy, the insurance companies, the consumers of health care. The church should be involved. All of the people that ought to have a say should really have a say in this discussion.
The PLP argues that it took them some 5 years to figure out what all these people have to say. They got the positions together and they came up with a plan. But you suggest that that plan is not efficient or effective.
I would suggest, as I did then, and as I say now, that they did not seek true, broad-based consultation.
Okay.
They sought PLP consultation.
Okay.
And unfortunately, what they got was a unilateral view of a very important pillar of life in the Bahamas.
Okay.
You know, healthcare is an extremely important part of our life. Mm-hmm. To be able to believe that if you get ill, that you can get access to most types of healthcare services is something that I believe most Bahamians feel they ought to enjoy.
And want.
Similarly, they ought to be able to enjoy a reasonable level of education. Now, as we start to define what is reasonable, that's where we start to get into trouble.
Okay.
And what I suggested is that the definition of healthcare and the sites where it was going to be provided, the scope of provision of those services needed to be better defined, and it also had to be better budgeted. And the amounts that they came up with were far, far too conservative to achieve anything as comprehensive as they claimed.
So then my question is, how do you achieve health care? Not the critique on their plan. You said that their plan doesn't work.
I have written a very extensive health care plan for the Bahamas.
Okay.
I even shared it with the PLP government at the time.
Okay.
I have no problem in dusting that off, updating it for the times.
Well,
that defines specifically what the lifetime or annual benefit per person, what things are going to be covered, what are not going to be covered, because we have to make critical decisions. No plan is going to be able to be all for everybody. We need to be able to decide how much we're willing to spend. We need to define what illnesses we wish to impact, and we need to roll it out gradually. For instance,
who do you suggest gets covered?
I think that we are going to move incrementally, and I would suggest that the first step should be from conception to 5 years of age.
Okay.
So that we provide an excellent head start for our people.
Okay.
So that pregnant mothers and children, immunizations, catastrophic illnesses, etc., be the first group. I think we're not going to have a hard time getting people to buy into that idea.
Okay.
Okay?
But the PLP suggests, and it seems that the F&M's plan is always about steps. The PLP suggests that the prescription drug plan is not enough. It is the first step, but it's not enough. And now you're suggesting another step, infancy to age 5. But when is everyone else going to get it? How are we going to reap benefit?
Never, utopia doesn't exist, you know.
Okay, so you say we never achieve health care for everyone.
No, we will never achieve the perfect plan.
Okay.
There will always be instances whereby we decide that, look, maybe we need to turn our attention to providing a new prison, or maybe we want to upgrade the schools. At what point do you say that you've put so much money into that particular basket, so much attention, that you've neglected everything else? The Consolidated Fund has attention that it has to pay to all aspects of our society. Roads, prisons, national security, education, culture, etc. You cannot take every single dollar that you have invested or that you have in the Consolidated Fund and put it on any one thing.
Okay.
Because we need to also put a similar amount of attention on our educational system. And so as we begin to improve healthcare, we may say, okay, it's gotten to a certain point that we're happy with. It's not perfect. Now let's go and do a similar thing to our educational system. We need to have a 10, 20, 30-year plan that outlines where we're headed as a country. And that 30-year plan will realize that we will never, ever reach. Because each time we think we get close to the ideal, we are going to move the goalpost.
Okay.
So that what may be acceptable in the view of the people looking on in 2010 terms, by 2020 we'll say, well, we thought that was going to be good enough, but we're going to move the goalpost even further. So we are constantly striving to get better.
Well, I'm hoping that you're going to dust off that plan, because it is suggested that on Wednesday you were supposed to be sworn in as the MP and then suggested for Minister of Health. That's what people say.
A lot of things have been suggested.
Okay.
And, you know, right now we're still trying to resolve this whole issue of representation for the people of Elizabeth.
Okay, on that issue, the Prime Minister had a press conference, and in that press conference, the Prime Minister refers to you as the MP-elect. Now, on information that we have, that is inappropriate. Why is it that the Prime Minister is so confident that you will, in fact, be made the MP-elect? Here's why I ask. There are 5 ballots that the PLP say they have, that they know how the person voted. Now, of course, that has to be verified, but they say that they will edge you out in the election court. Ryan Pinder also says that the claim that he is not a valid candidate is not true because he has proof of renunciation. He said it here on this show. Why is the F&M so confident that you will be made the MP?
I think we have looked at the information that we have available. F&Ms and PLPs in the recount, which lasted almost 42 hours, if I recall, had an opportunity to see these ballots.
Okay.
Bear in mind that these are individuals who are not on the register. Now,
the PLP says that they were eligible to vote.
but they were not on the register.
Okay.
There's also information as far as the geographic locations of their homes. So that even if you say that they were accidentally or inadvertently left off the register, were they accidentally or inadvertently not living in Elizabeth at the time?
Okay.
And on and on and on. I don't think I need to show
I understand
our hand completely. But I think the Prime Minister rarely, if ever, speaks out of turn. And I believe that he made the comment, and I support his view, that when all of this activity is done, that I should be sworn in as the member to represent the people of Elizabeth.
Okay, let me ask you a question. During the campaign, you did not attend the Great Debate. I was there at the Great Debate. I want to ask you about that. Similarly, I asked Ryan Pinder. He's never voted in the Bahamas. He verified that he has, in fact, never voted. My question to you is, why not attend the debate? Why not give the people in Elizabeth ability to question you in different fora? You can go to their front doors, you can speak in their community centers, you address them at a debate. And to address the issue before you say it, it was in Elizabeth. It was at Epiphany. The church extended themselves to open up the debate. Why not attend?
Well, technically, Epiphany is not in Elizabeth. But
Okay.
that's, it's in Yamacraw.
These boundaries
But,
change so much. I don't know.
Be that as it may. We had a very clear plan for a very brief, intense campaign.
Okay.
And we looked at all of the options we could do a number of things. Clearly, the invitation for what I believe is going to be a significant part of the political landscape was received, it was discussed, and we made a decision not to attend.
So you agree with debates?
Oh, I think it's going to be a significant part of the political landscape.
So then
moving
why
forward.
not attend? That doesn't compute. You're saying that you agree with debates, you say that you like the idea, it's going to be a significant part, but you did not participate when you had a chance.
There are some things that need to be sorted out with the debate. The rules for the debate, the impartiality of the
I mean, I saw the debate.
host
It
and
didn't
so on and so
seem.
forth.
It didn't seem
as well
unfair.
as, you know, we made a decision. It was a political decision.
Okay.
Not to participate.
Okay.
We fully expected. You know, one of my high school teachers used to say, in nature, there are no punishments or rewards, only
Yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
You suffer, enjoy the consequences of your actions.
Okay.
We made a decision. That decision, some people say it was a good decision, some people say it was not a good decision.
Okay.
We were prepared to accept the consequences of that decision. Plain and simple.
I mean, I hear the argument, but it goes further. And this is the same thing I suggested with Mr. Pinder. His voting record factors into us getting to know what kind of person we're dealing with.
Exactly.
We've seen your platform, we've seen the website, all of that is exciting, but we see all that before. We've seen the trust agenda, we've seen our plan, and some of that never gets delivered. So the question is, outside of your promises, how do we get to know you if you do not engage in all of our invitation as something that you find to be a significant part of the political landscape?
I hardly believe that people have not had an opportunity to hear, to feel who Dwayne Sands is and where he stands, because I've spent time on Issues of the Day, Jones and Company, a number of other talk shows around town. So, you know, let's call a spade a spade.
Okay.
Wendell Jones has done a good thing.
Okay.
You know, we did not participate, and it was a deliberate decision. It was not an accidental decision, it was a deliberate decision. Moving forward, were we to do it again at another election, we may decide to participate. Okay. We may decide to participate. I don't think that any talk show, any political activity, there's a mandate that you have to participate.
But doesn't that suggest a sort of attitude on behalf of the FNM? We may decide, suggesting that it's almost up to you whether you talk to us or not. That suggests some sort, not on your behalf maybe, but certainly on behalf of the FNM. The response from Carl Bethel was one debate too many from 2002. Some people find that funny. Some people say, man, who they think they is?
Again.
They can tell us, if they won't come, if they won't come.
I think we step on your toe a little bit. Okay?
Yeah. But you did. That's what not coming to debates do.
And from somebody else who was not the host of the debate, they may not have seen it in the same light as you see it.
Okay. I wasn't the host of the debate. Mr. Wendell Jones was the able host.
And I, as I've said, and I'll repeat it,
okay,
I think he's to be commended for hosting the event. I did not participate. I have had occasion to go back and look at it.
Okay.
I wonder, and this is a very sincere comment, whether Mr. Pinder now regrets having participated in that debate.
I should have asked Mr. Pinder that when he was here.
You know,
let me ask
based
you,
on my viewing of that debate, I would imagine that he probably does regret participating in that debate.
But a politician who may have not participated well, that's part of the territory. If you end up looking bad at a debate, you look bad.
You see, you have to be.
So you protected yourself from looking bad.
I have to be very careful that I don't appear to be arrogant and so on and so forth.
Is that because you have a reputation for such arrogance?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
But, you know, if I were to say that, you know, debating is certainly not one of the things that I'm weak at,
okay,
perhaps that's a reasonable way of saying it.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with being afraid,
worrying about. I thought you would have presented quite well.
Worrying about whether or not I would show well. That was not the issue. It did not fit into our strategy as far as what was important for us at the time in a very short election, 3.5 weeks, 4 weeks tops.
Yeah.
We had a wish to to meet and debate as many people in their homes,
Okay.
to get to touch as many people, have them ask me directly the questions that would have been asked in other fora.
One last question for you. The pink elephant in the room. Papa, Hubert Ingram. Some people suggest that he ran the campaign and not yourself. Some people suggest that he is in fact in charge, like it is suggested that he always is. Is that true?
I think you need to understand that the Free National Movement is a political organization that recognizes the makeup of a team.
But we saw Mr. Ingram's
There
face
is-
more than yours.
There is a leader, and there are other members of that team.
But I follow that argument in a general election. This was a by-election. Your constituency, not Mr. Ingram's. His is in Abaco. Why him more than you?
I doubt seriously that people saw him more than me. I think it really is a matter of perspective.
Okay.
Certainly, if you look at my participation in a by-election, whether it's at the rallies, whether it's on the street, etc., I mean, the person that was going door to door, meeting people, talking to people was me. But let's not diminish the significance of the leaders of the political parties in any political activity in this country.
There's certainly no diminishing that.
Okay? And to do otherwise would be, I believe, disingenuous.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first. Papa say he got a brand new brag. Dwayne Sands says Elizabeth is his constituency. He'll be the next MP. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first on Citizens Review. We just interviewed Dr. Dwayne Sands himself and Mr. Ryan Pinder. Mr. Pinder says he's not a citizen, but that's irrelevant. Dr. Sands says he believes in health care, but he has his own plans. I guess if he becomes minister, he'll fix it. But we'll see. That's up for you guys to decide. We've been getting a lot of positive feedback about the citizens' arrest every week. People like it. They say it's hard-hitting and it's direct. So we'll continue to address these hard-hitting points whenever people do foolishness in our country. Now, this week, I was reading the paper and I saw a newspaper article that said the Prime Minister himself, Hubert Ingram, Papa, says that in order for the PLP to carry their case before election court, he thinks that they must pay a deposit to ensure that the courts will be able to collect if the PLP loses the election court battle. Now, this is based on the fact that the PLP owes some $1 million to the courts. They owe Bahamas Air, and they owe about $250,000 to ZNS. The Prime Minister, without shame, is suggesting that justice is for sale in the Bahamas. But then I thought about it. If someone were to come and thief my land, or your land, or our business, or our money, if we don't have the money to fight it in court, then our things get taken. Sometimes it is be these same politicians and lawyers who thieving your stuff, even when you have the papers in your hand to prove it. Some of y'all out there know exactly what I'm talking about. The Prime Minister, in his shameful political strategy, is exactly right, though. If you don't have the money in this Bahamas, then you can't get no justice. Justice is for sale. Further to that, what's good for the goose got to be good for the gander. So if we got to pay for our justice, and it don't seem like nobody checking for us, then the PLP got to pay for their justice too. So PLP, pay your deposit. Pay the deposit. Because the PLP boasts of having all these brilliant lawyers, the best in the Bahamas, but they was apparently busy lawyering and not legislating. When they were in power, they didn't fix the system so that justice and the system were about just that, justice, and not justice for sale. We had to pay to get justice, and we still got to pay to get justice now. So, now the PLP know how the Bahamian people feel. When you can't get justice, it just hurts you. Just make you feel bad. Justice ain't for sale. It costs a lot of money. It ain't just for sale. They selling it for high, like health care. So, PLP, pay your deposit. But Mr. Ingram, it's not at all right for you to continue to sell justice. The F&M needs to legislate about this system for sale too. Fix the problem, man. They say use the delivery man. Deliver it. Fix justice. We shouldn't have to pay for it, but until we fix it, the PLP got to pay. So this week, we're bringing out the paddy wagon. We're locking up the justice system of the Bahamas. We're locking up and placing a warrant out for arrest for two fellas. And I can introduce you to these fellas. One named Peter Ingram, and the next one named Paul Christie. You lock up Peter and Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, we know, just like everybody else, that Peter ain't no better than Paul. So, justice for sale in the Bahamas, PLP, pay your deposit. Thank you for joining us here tonight. To all of our viewers on JCN and on citizensreviewtv.com, good night.